I'd be looking at my nostrils.
What are you doing?
It says lovely mouth.
What are you doing?
Anyway, Judge has such a background that I could not narrow his introduction down to less than 8 minutes and 33 seconds. So here you go. All right. A guest speaker is an award-winning speaker, Toastmaster, yoga instructor, world-class speaking coach, and stand-up comedian. And those aren't even his best qualities. Hailing from just outside our nation's politically toxic capital, please welcome Judge Martin.
First of all, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, folks, my name is Dutch. Actually, my real name is Darren, spelled with a Y, but I go by Dutch because my real name is Darren. I grew up in the town where Superman was born, where the baseball team went from the Indians to the Guardians, and the football team is bad no matter what you call them. I grew up in the town where the river catches fire, Cleveland, Ohio. I'm the youngest of 6 children, and it was hard being raised by a single mother because my mom hated it whenever I would ask her about things that she felt were none of my business, you know, like her age, how much money she made, and who my real father was. It's okay, you can laugh at that. It's weird that my mom never gave me a cool Afrocentric sounding name, you know, like Draquan or Jarquavius. Instead, she named me Darren. Which tells me that all my mother ever really wanted was a white baby. See, fitting in was hard as a kid. My mother kept my head in the books. She stressed education and perfect grammar. So unlike the other Black kids I grew up with, English is actually my first language. See, I'm terrible at slang. My Ebonics game is not on fleek. I wish they had Rosetta Stone, the Steve Harvey edition, you know? Don't you hate it when people make assumptions about you based on how you look? I mean, look, you all see me as this big Black dude with a human skull behind me, and you're thinking, yeah, he's a yoga instructor. How many of you have tried yoga? Well, click the hand emoji, raise your hand, click the hand emoji. How many of you have done yoga? It's not as easy as it looks, is it?
No.
Exactly. See, folks, the first time I tried yoga, it was hard. I mean, all of that stretching and breathing and trembling, it felt like my hips and hamstrings were applying for legal separation. But now, I love yoga. In fact, as an African-American man, my yoga practice opens my body up in ways a police cavity search never could. This is why I became a certified yoga instructor, to help folks like you achieve your own grand opening. But I'll tell you this, folks. Yeah, I work out, I do yoga, I eat right, but at 47 years old, I'm just going to come out and say it. It is hard losing weight when you get older. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's like you have to watch what you eat, your workouts take longer, and your clothes are so tight, even your relaxed fit jeans have hypertension. I mean, you've heard of that phrase, too big for your britches, right? Well, you know you're too big for your britches when your boxer briefs have more holes in the crotch than the Diablo Hills golf course. You know you really have to watch what you eat when your rear end is the same size as the congressional district you live in. See, folks, I'm no longer a small man. I'm officially a big man. Even my yoga practice has changed now that I'm a big man. See, early on in my yoga journey, all of the 26 traditional yoga postures or poses were an essential part of my overall yoga practice. But now I'm so big, half of those poses have gone into private practice. Some have even formed their own LLC. So now I got to work out more, do my yoga. Now I have to do cardio. I'm terrified of doing cardio. Remember those public service announcements from back in the day with the egg frying in the pan, you know, and the voiceover message, "This is your brain on drugs." Okay. Well, every time I set foot on a treadmill at the gym, there's a voice in the back of my head that goes, "This is your metabolism on pause." It's scary how your metabolism changes once you turn 40. Like I said, I'm 47. But when I was younger, I could eat whatever I wanted, and my metabolism worked overtime. But once I turned 40, my metabolism went from model employee to union worker on strike. And then when I turned 45, it just took early retirement. And that voice of my metabolism in the back of my head, it doesn't just speak to me. It preaches to me like it's Martin Luther King Jr. "I've been working around the clock, burning all your fat and breaking down your glucose, and I haven't had a paid vacation in over 40 years. Well, no more. I said no more. I'm gonna let the fat accumulate around your midsection. Why? Because I'm your metabolism, so you can't report me to human resources. I'm union, so you can't fire me. I'm grandfathered into your DNA, so I don't need your permission. You can run on that treadmill all you want. I'm moving to Florida. I'm free at last. Free at last. I'm gonna let the cellulite get medieval on you. Well, you get the idea. Folks, in addition to a yoga instructor, speaker, all that good stuff that Buddy was kind enough to mention, I'm also a self-described nerd. I'm an avid reader, a lifelong learner. I came to this realization many years ago by taking a very unusual path for most kids. It all started like this. Phalanges, metatarsals, talus, tibia, fibula, patella, femur. Don't worry, I'm not having a bad reaction to the Pfizer vaccine. I'm talking about the bones in your body. You think you know your body? Okay, well, where are your phalanges? No, buddy, those are not your phalanges. Those words represent the first time in my life I experienced a sense of urgency. One that taught me a valuable lesson about what you lose by fitting in versus what you gain by standing out. Lamorinda Sunrise Rotarians and guests, let me tell you about the time I memorized all 206 bones of the human body in 3 days. Let me take you back to September 1985. I'm 11 years old and just started middle school. One day my mother tells me that we have to move down to Birmingham, Alabama so that she could take care of my grandmother. Now, my older siblings, they're old enough, they're out of the house, so it's just me and my mom. So later on that month, Mom and I pack up, take a Greyhound bus to the deep South, where I had to go to a new school, make new friends, and for the first time in my life, learn to speak slang with a Southern accent. Fitting in just got a whole lot harder. See, Black kids in Cleveland told me I talk proper. Black kids in the South told me I talk white. The white kids thought I was too Black. The Black kids didn't think I was Black enough. So even as an Oreo, I didn't fit in. How many times have you opened a pack of Oreo cookies and said, yeah, that's the bad one? Never. I mean, because you know, that creamy white center, that never goes bad. It can make your body go bad, but it doesn't go bad. But for the first time in my life, I felt like a bad Oreo cookie. Then one day, I met one of the teachers who changed my life forever, Mr. Ezel. He was my 6th grade science teacher. He taught science Monday through Friday, was an ordained Baptist preacher on Sunday morning. Now, what he did on Saturday night, that's between him, God, and the church secretary. Now, for about 3 weeks before I got there, Mr. Ezel was teaching the skeletal system, the bones of the body. But none of the students could go to the front of the class and recite all of the bones. That's when I had my first sense of urgency. I'm going to learn all the bones of the body. This is how I'm going to get kids to like me. Now, before the age of the internet, there was the age of the encyclopedia. My grandmother had a vintage volume of the Encyclopedia Britannica. Vintage, untouched, and never opened. They were older than the china cabinet she had them in. First time I cracked one open, a puff of dust hit me right in the face. But I was determined. I spent the next 3 days studying the bones of the body like I was trying to get into medical school. I drew pictures of the bones that would have made Vincent van Gogh cut off his other ear. I took copious notes years before I even knew what the word copious meant. I'd said to myself, you know what? I'm an 11-year-old boy about to go through puberty. I am not going to miss a bone. So Monday morning comes along, right? Mr. Ezel calls for a volunteer. I raise my hand. Now, at first he hesitated since I was the new kid, but like the Cleveland Browns, he was desperate for a win. So he said, so I walked to the front of the class next to the 6-foot-long poster of the skeletal system. I take a deep breath and go for broke. Phalanges, metatarsals, talus, tibia, fibula, patella, femur. The lumbopelvic hip complex consisting of the sacroiliac, sacrum, coccyx, and ilium. Phalanges of the hand, metacarpals, carpals, radius, ulna, humerus. Scapula, clavicle, sternum, rib cage. The bones of the skull, my man back here, consist of the mandible or jawbone, maxilla, the 3 smallest bones inside the body located inside the ear of the malleus, incus, and stapes. Moving on up, we have the frontal eminence, parietal eminence, the temporal bones, and the occipital protuberance. Finally, we have the bones of the cervical, thoracic, and lumbar vertebrae. A look of utter rage comes over Mr. Ezel's face. I'm thinking, oh my God, did I miss a bone? He looks at me, he turns to the class and goes full preacher beast mode. Y'all should be ashamed of yourselves. I've given y'all 3 weeks to learn the bones of the body. And this young man, I said, this young man does it in 3 days. Y'all should be ashamed of yourselves. Now, granted, I did not make any friends that day. My class hated me. I did not fit in. But hey, at least I didn't miss a bone. Here's what that whole experience taught me, folks. We're smarter than we think. But oftentimes as young people, we sacrifice our intellectual potential for social acceptance, which is exactly what I did for years afterwards by cutting school and goofing off in class instead of focusing on my schoolwork. Why? Because I was in the grips of a second, common, yet more pernicious sense of urgency. I wanted to fit in. And one day, it was my high school French teacher, the second teacher who changed my life, who said, "Monsieur Martin, in all of my years of teaching, I have seen so much talent and potential wasted because promising young people like you chose to fit in instead of stand out. Is that what you want, monsieur?" At that moment, I experienced my most powerful sense of urgency as a kid, to stand out from the crowd and become the lifelong learner I was meant to be. From that point on, that's exactly what I did. And as a result, I became the first African-American male student in the history of my high school to graduate at the top of his class. Now, that same sense of urgency also propelled me to graduate from college, earn a master's degree, have an 11-year career as a diplomat, become a husband and father. But that same sense of urgency also taught me compassion through my yoga practice. Here's what I mean. Have you ever had to pay for someone else's mistake? Remember how it made you feel? Think about that. Having to pay for someone else's mistake. Well, you should have seen me on a spring day back in 2018 when my car broke down. I pulled to the side of the road, called my insurance company, then waited for the tow truck to arrive next to a young police officer who quickly arrives on the scene. Let's call him Officer Jones. Now, after about 15 minutes, Officer Jones turns to me with a big smile on his face and says, "Mr. Martin, the local ordinance states that if the tow truck doesn't arrive within 15 minutes, then I have to call it in." "Fine," I said. He calls it in. The tow truck arrives, and to make a long story short, because of Officer Jones's call, my insurance company would not cover the cost of towing my car. My car was impounded for 5 days, and it cost me $600 to get my car out. Oh, did I mention my repair bill? $1,300. When I got home, I was so angry. I told my wife, "I'm going to the police department tomorrow and I'm going to give Officer Jones a piece of my mind." She said, "Well, honey, make sure it's a small piece because that's all you can afford." Married life, it is what it is. But instead, I decided to write an email to City Hall. I was fuming. As I sat down, I began typing, right? Then suddenly I remembered the words from a book I read some time ago. A book that was published about 85 years ago, but it was written by a man who was clearly decades ahead of his time. Now, as I'm sitting there in front of my laptop, ready to rip Officer Jones a new one, I could literally hear this author whispering in my ear in that distinct Southwestern Missouri accent he was known for. "Dutch, if you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehive. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain." Eating those words, my email went something like this. "To whom it may concern. My car broke down the other day. I pulled to the side of the road, called my insurance company, then waited for the tow truck to arrive next to Officer Jones. After about 15 minutes, Officer Jones called it in. Next thing I know, I'm out almost $2,000. Now, what I want to know is, what are you going to do about Officer..." I continued. I do not blame Officer Jones for what happened. I'm sure he was just doing his job. In fact, he was a tremendous help to me, and I have no doubt he will have a long and successful career in law enforcement. That said, I would really appreciate it if your office would take another look at my situation. Call me at this number and we can discuss it further. I look forward to hearing from you. Yours truly, Dutch Martin. Spell check, send. Exactly 1 week later, I received the following email. Hello, Mr. Martin. I read your email the other day and would like to apologize for the inconvenience you suffered. Officer Jones is a rookie on the police force, and although he meant well, he didn't fully understand the local ordinance that he quoted you. Therefore, I have arranged to have the towing company reimburse you the $600 towing and impounding charge. Hopefully this will help cover some of the cost of getting your car repaired. Call me at this number and we can discuss it further. I look forward to hearing from you. Yours truly, the Chief of Police? The Chief of Police wrote me back, and I didn't even have to submit to another cavity search. A week later, I was reimbursed and I got my car fixed. But most importantly, I learned a valuable lesson on how to win friends and influence people. This book here, by none other than Dale Carnegie. See, folks, instead of criticizing Officer Jones, I gave sincere, honest appreciation to a young man who was just doing his job. Instead of condemning him, I aroused in his superior officer an eager want to help me while appealing to the nobler motives of our local law enforcement community to protect and serve. Instead of filing a complaint, which no doubt would have had an adverse effect on that young man's career aspirations, I simply allowed a young rookie cop just starting out in his career to save face and keep his dignity while giving him a fine reputation to live up to. As a result, the Chief of Police was able to see that young man the same way I did, through the eyes of 18th century German philosopher Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, who said, look at a man as he is and he only becomes worse. But if you look at him as if he were what he could be, then he becomes what he should be. How's that for a sense of urgency? See, instead of kicking the beehive because of a relatively minor inconvenience committed by a young, ambitious police officer whose heart was always in the right place, I felt a sense of urgency to see him as if he were what he could be, so that he can ultimately become what he should be. Have you ever been criticized or condemned for a mistake that you made? Remember how it made you feel? Imagine if I had gone down to the police department to give Officer Jones a piece of my mind. Buddy Burke would not have posted my bail. In closing, ladies and gentlemen, a sense of urgency can take many forms. Yet, no matter what form it takes, the key is that it motivates you to become a better version of yourself each and every day. So now I ask you, what's your sense of urgency? Whatever it is, I hope you feel it deep down in your bones. Thank you.